During the 1940s, the United States joined in allegiance with Great Britain and the British Empire to wage war against the communist regime. The United States joined the war after Japan's devastating attack on Pearl Harbor. The war effort continued until 1945 with the communists defeated. The Allies stormed the beaches of Normandy and ended the war in Europe in May of 1945, in the battle commonly known as D-Day. However, the war in the Pacific continued until September of 1945. The surrendering factor for Japan was when 2 atomic bombs were dropped on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. President Harry S Truman had to surrender his personal beliefs and compromise with the ideology of a leader to achieve what was best for his nation, preventing thousands of more casualties by ordering the U.S. States Naval Base at Pearl Harbor in the Hawaii Territory. The bombing killed more than 2,300 Americans. It completely destroyed the American battleship USS Arizona and capsized the USS Oklahoma. The attack sank or beached a total of 12 ships and damaged 9 others. 160 aircrafts were destroyed and 150 others were damaged. Over 2,400 people died and 1,178 people were wounded. On December 8, 1941, the U.S. and Britain declared war on Japan. Germany and Italy Harry S. Truman had to struggle through internal conflict and compromise his values in the decision to use the atomic bombs in World War II. Harry S. Truman was a Baptist. On the website www.baptistdistinctives.org/resources/articles/what makes a Baptist. The beliefs of Baptists. They have strong beliefs in the Lordship of Jesus Christ, the Bible as the sole written authority for faith and practice, sole competency, salvation from sin and eternal death to forgiveness and eternal life only by faith in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, who is the grace gift of God, the priesthood of each believer and all believers in Christ. Believers' baptism. Baptism in the Lord's Supper as wonderfully symbolic but not essential for salvation. Church membership composed only of persons who have been born again. Use of the bomb was illegal. In September 1938, the League of Nations, under the recognized principles of international law, issued a unanimous resolution outlawing the international bombing of civilian populations, with special emphasis against bombing military objectives from the air. The League warned any attack on legitimate military objectives must be carried out in such a way that civilian populations in the neighborhood are not bombed through negligence. Significantly, the resolution also reaffirmed that the usage of chemical or bacterial methods in the conduct of war is contrary to international law. In other words, a special category of illegal weapons have been recognized, a category today called weapons of mass destruction. Use of the bombs was racially motivated. The use of the bomb was not racially motivated, the propaganda was. Propaganda was produced to persuade people to be on the U.S.'s side. The bomb was not racially motivated. At the time, Truman seemed conflicted over his decision. The day after the Hiroshima bomb was dropped, Truman received a telegram from Senator Richard B. Russell of Georgia encouraging the president to use as many atomic bombs as possible on Japan, claiming the American people believe that we should continue to strike the Japanese until they are brought groveling to their knees. Truman responded, "I know that Japan is a terribly cruel and uncivilized nation in warfare, but I can't bring myself to believe that just because they are beasts, we should ourselves act in that same manner. For myself, I certainly regret the necessity of wiping out the whole population because of the pig-headedness of the leaders in a nation, and for your information, I'm not going to do it unless absolutely necessary." States could launch a traditional ground invasion of the Japanese home islands. However, experience showed that the Japanese did not easily surrender. They had been willing to make great sacrifices to defend the smallest islands. They were likely to fight even more fiercely if the United States invaded their homeland. During the battle at Iwo Jima in 1945, 6,200 U.S. soldiers had died. Later that year at Okinawa, 13,000 soldiers and sailors were killed. Casualties on Okinawa were 35%. 1 out of every 3 U.S. participants was wounded or killed. Truman was afraid that an invasion of Japan would look like Okinawa from one end of Japan to the other. Casualty predictions varied, but all were high. The price of invasion would be millions of American dead and Japanese casualties. Truman and his military advisors assumed that a ground invasion would be opposed not only by the available organized military forces of the empire, but also by a fanatically hostile population. Documents discovered after the war indicated that they were right. Despite knowing the cause was hopeless, Japan planned a resistance so ferocious, resulting in costs so appalling, that they hoped that the United States would simply call for a ceasefire where each nation would agree to stop fighting and each nation would retain the territory they occupied at the time. Almost 1/4 million Japanese casualties were expected in the invasion. Truman wrote, "My object is to save as many American lives as possible, but I also have a human feeling for the women and children of Japan." In August 1945, it appeared inevitable that Japan civilians would have to suffer more death and casualties before surrender. Another option was to demonstrate the power of the atomic bomb to frighten the Japanese into surrendering. An island target was considered, but it raised several concerns. First, who would Japan select to evaluate the demonstration and advise the government? A single scientist? A committee of politicians? How much time would elapse before Japan communicated its decision, and how that time would be used? To prepare more fighting? Would a nation surrender based on the opinion of a single person or a small group? Second, what if the bomb turned out to be a dud? This was a new weapon, not clearly understood. The world would be watching the demonstration of a new weapon so frightening that an enemy would surrender without a fight. What if this super weapon didn't work? Would that encourage Japan to fight harder? Third, there were only 2 bombs in existence at the time. More were in production, but dud or not dud, it was worth it to expend 50% of the country's atomic arsenal in a demonstration. The Manhattan Project led to both depredation and success, facing the likelihood of an invasion of Japan, which would result in hundreds of thousands of American casualties. President Harry Truman searched for possible alternatives for this dreadful situation. The best alternative was to bomb Japanese cities until Emperor Hirohito accepted terms of unconditional surrender. After searching for several possible targets, Hiroshima and Nagasaki were selected. On August 6, 1945, Little Boy, the gun-type bomb, was dropped on Hiroshima, killing an estimated to 60 to 70,000 people. 3 days later, Fat Man, the implosion bomb, was dropped on Nagasaki, killing approximately 40,000 people. And on August 15th, Japan abdicated to the United States and its allies unconditionally. This officially ended World War II and launched the world into the nuclear radiation. Unlike the radiation from a light bulb or microwave, is energetic enough to ionize atoms by knocking off their electrons. This ionizing radiation can cause DNA molecules directly by breaking the bonds between atoms, or it can ionize water molecules and form free radicals, which incidence of leukemia among survivors increased noticeably 5 to 6 years after the bombings, and about a decade later after, survivors began suffering from thyroid, breast, lung, and other cancers at higher than normal rates. For solid cancers, the added risk related to radiation exposure continued to increase throughout the lifespan of survivors, even to this day. Almost 7 decades after the bombings, women exposed to the bombings while they were pregnant experienced higher rates of miscarriages and deaths among their infants. Children exposed to radiation in their mother's wombs were more likely to have an intellectual disability, impaired growth, as well as risk. There was a noted increase in patients with anemia, which is a disease where your blood can't create enough red blood cells. The effects of this lasted as long as 10 years in some individuals. Cataracts. Cataracts are when the lens of the eyes become foggy. This can take several years to develop and was first found to be an issue 3 years after the bombs were dropped. Age and distance to the bomb played a big factor in those who developed cataracts. In the mid-1950s, at the Hiroshima Red Cross Hospital, there were 435 survivors screened, and 116 had developed cataracts. Of that 116, 87 were within 2 kilometers of the bomb blast. Cataracts in patients were caused by high radiation. The bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima introduced nuclear weapons to the world. Einstein had written a letter to Roosevelt that explained that Germany was making nuclear weapons and they were going to implement them in war. Einstein had suggested that the U.S. should start looking into atomic energy. That letter is what started the Manhattan Project, which introduced the atomic bomb to the world. The development of the technology ruptured the world forever because it possessed the ability to be so devastating to so many people. The fear of the atomic bomb and nuclear weapons is ever present in today's society. It is present because North Korea constantly claims to have nukes and long-range missiles. North Korea has those weapons and everybody knows